Hey everyone, you're watching this video late on a Monday night, which means I still technically hit my goal of having these up on Monday, but that's not exactly how I wanted this schedule to roll out. Unfortunately, as I'm juggling setting up this new studio at the Cards Against Humanity office and also settling into my new job at Kotaku, which now, I'm in the second and third week of, so things are getting a little bit more normal, but it's just, lots of things are kind of going on in my life all at the same time. And once all that stuff settles in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be able to get into a rhythm where this stuff happens a little less often, because what's really important to me is that these videos start becoming regular and they start being something you can count on certain days of the week. And obviously I want to do surprises. I want to do different things. I don't always want to stick to a rigid schedule, but I want to be able to say, hey, every Monday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, you're going to see a new question and answer video. We're going to start, kind of establishing a rapport with you guys, with me, something that you guys can rely on. And, yes, so I apologize. I'm going to record. I'm actually going to be gone this weekend. I'm going to Las Vegas, Nevada with my brother. I turned 30 in a couple of weeks, and one of the things that seemed like a dumb idea was to go to Vegas, even though it's a place I can only stand for about 2 days because I'm not super into gambling, but the idea of being able to drink a beer on the street is pretty damn appealing. So I'm actually going there with my brother. We're going to get into some light trouble, also called a hangover, while we're out there. So I'm not going to be able to record that on Sundays and put it up on Monday. So before I leave for Las Vegas, I'm going to record another one of these. I've got tons of questions to pick from. You guys have been great about going to patrickklubik.tumblr.com and submitting stuff to me. In addition to what I answer on a daily basis on Tumblr, had a bunch of really great questions that I can pull from. So we'll get another one recorded this week. It'll be up on Monday. Look forward to that. And, in the very near future, we're going to be doing a bunch more streaming. I'm slowly figuring out the proper studio set up over at Cards Against Humanity, like I mentioned. Tons of really cool equipment that's getting installed there. It's a joined space. I was certainly teasing its existence while I was still at Giant Bomb, but it was never meant to be. Even if it was the home of quote unquote Giant Bomb Chicago, it was never sort of a giant bomb endeavor. It was always something that was a collaboration between the folks at Cards Against Humanity and myself. Mostly because it's not a space for me. I will use it a lot. I am looking forward to being able to do some really cool stuff out of there. But it really was something in which, my expertise and interest in streaming, in playing games, in talking on the internet was something that Cards wanted to get into. It also, they wanted to build something that would attract creative folks to the office because the new Cards office is not only about Cards Against Humanity, but it's also about a ton of amazing folks in the Chicagoland area, whether they're artists, designers, programmers. There's a whole spectrum of folks, including people that aren't even into video games, and hopefully down the line that'll also include some people who do like streaming, and maybe that'll be related to video games, and maybe it won't. But in either case, that was something I was working with them on getting it set up so it works not only for me and for them, but whoever might be coming down the line. So once all that stuff sort of settles in, I think some really cool stuff is going to happen, including that run of Demon Souls prior to Bloodborne coming out. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and open up this beer, and also apologize. Not only is the video late, but the quality, big dip between last week and this week. I normally use this thing to shoot these videos because so I shoot them and I record them on my nicer mic here for the fancy audio purposes. I splice those together and then that goes up on the internet. But I thought I had it charging, but it turns out if the pop filter on the camera, if you have it switched to on, even though the camera is off or like in a rest state with the display and the lens kind of pushed back in, it doesn't charge. So you actually have to physically shift it to off, and then it will actually begin to induct a charge into the camera. So I sat down here to record and then realized, whoops, this camera's dead. So turned on my webcam and I said, look, I'm just going to make do, and I'll just chalk that up to a learning experience, because the video is always a learning experience. What's not a learning experience is how to answer questions. I know how to do that. And so I'm going to load up a little document here and see what we got going on. D.W. Jill asked, what's the last book you read? Well, it sort of depends on your definition of a book. I am been really into Marvel Unlimited lately. I signed up over the Christmas period when they had something like a sign up for $1 and read all of the Marvel comic books, which isn't true. And as I've been trying to read various arcs like the War of Kings and the Realm of Kings, it's been frustrating when there are certain one-off issues that are part of the continuity but aren't in Marvel Unlimited. So if you want to read them digitally, you have to then go and purchase them separately. And part of the reason I got Marvel Unlimited was because I cannot justify the cost of like reading an entire series, an event like Realm of Kings. That would be, those issues are a couple bucks a piece. Like we're talking, $100, $200. And the idea that I can spend $7.99 or whatever it is for Marvel Unlimited to read that entire arc, it's really appealing, especially because I'm not trying to stay current. I'm just kind of digging into back issues and fleshing out arcs now that I'm really invested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's an opportunity to go back and realize, what these characters were up to, what other story arcs might play out in future films. Like I really, really, truly am enjoying, especially the cosmic side of Marvel, which I just have precious little understanding of because it's never been realized before on film, and that's just kind of beginning to happen in the cinematic side of Marvel, but obviously has been going on in the print version of Marvel for a very, very long time. And in terms of like an actual book, let me see if I'm signed in to Kindle on my phone. You can actually read books on the iPhone 6 because the screen is kind of big enough. So I just recently bought 2 books. I haven't read them yet. Redeployment by Phil Clay, which won a bunch of awards. It's essentially a bunch of fictional short stories about the men and women in the armed services coming back from fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, and what it's like to come back and trying to adjust to real life after having been out at war in various roles for a decade plus for many of them. And they're I think based on anecdotes and real life stories, but the actual stories being told, my understanding is they're not actually pulled directly from any one person or place or story. And the other one is The Cynic by Alec McGillis. The Cynic, the political education of Mitch McConnell. We have a new Congress in session with a new leader in the Senate, and it made sense to kind of read up on the background of Mitch McConnell, which I haven't done yet, but I've heard is a pretty short and effective read that I meant to do when the new Congress came into session. I just haven't had a chance to actually sit down and do it. So those are the 2 books that are kind of on my docket, but I guess that doesn't answer your question. I'm spending a lot of time on this first question, but the last book I read, it won't pull up the full. It's called The Lucifer Effect. Understanding. Actually, I don't think I read that. I don't think I read that one yet. I think I bought it and then I didn't read it. It's the Psychopath Test by John Ronson. If you saw, what's that movie that he was responsible for? John Ronson. It just came out. Frank. So you've seen like the movies with the guy with the big head who's in a band. The author of the book that's based on is John Ronson. He did a book called The Psychopath Test, in which he explores the medical definition for psychopathy and sociopathy, and then tries to break down what makes up a sociopath and a psychopath. And it's a really entertaining, informative read, and honestly tells you a lot about internet culture, I think. Not to say that everyone that is a jerk on the internet is a sociopath or a psychopath, but that just sort of some of the personalities he comes across, some of the traits you see you can see some analogs. And oddly enough, he's actually working on a book about internet trolling that comes out sometime early this year, which just seems like such a natural extension from the Psychopath Test that I cannot wait to read what that is all about. So thanks for that question. Very, really good one. Old English Baptism says, I remember a while ago you mentioned possibly trying to play Crusader Kings 2. Is that something you'd still be interested in doing? It's a very interesting game and a genre that gets very little press outside of a few PC gaming specific websites. I'd be interested to see what somebody more into with mainstream gaming would think of it. Yeah, I am absolutely totally interested in checking out Crusader Kings 2. It's something that I probably had a little more lateral ability to do when I was at Giant Bomb because, sort of my directive at that site was just to do whatever I thought was interesting and, was not completely in the realm of not getting traffic or interest from the audience. But whereas Kotaku, I was hired a little more specifically to be writing, investigating, commenting, and reporting on not necessarily just exclusively mainstream games, but that was definitely part of the conversation. Was that we want you to write about the Assassin's Creeds and the Call of Duties. So it's not exclusively what I have to write about, but that is sort of in the realm of my assignment. But that certainly doesn't stop me from doing something on the side about Crusader Kings 2, and I think that game is a great test case for diving into a game that I know nothing about, trying to come at that with an outsider's perspective. It's certainly a game and a series that people are very passionate about and obviously love a lot. And so, I always find it kind of interesting to try and give those games a chance. It's very easy to write them off and say, well, that stuff's too complicated. It's not for me. But as I've shown time and time again, it's often that we make assumptions about genres or series or franchises or what have you, and it's often that you just need the right entryway into them. It's not so much that you can't get into them or they're not for you as much as maybe that one wasn't for you. And so, that was the case with strategy games, with XCOM and Fire Emblem. With visual novels, it was 999, VLR, and then this last year, Danganronpa 1 and 2. So, if Crusader Kings 2 is that entry point, I'm not sure, but whether it's that or something else, I continue to be very interested in entertaining the possibility of playing genres that I'm unfamiliar with and trying to give a perspective of, what is this like for the average person that maybe looks at this and goes, this is weird. I don't get it. What weirdos are playing this game? Well, maybe they're not weirdos. Maybe you just don't understand what they're doing. And it's been really important for me over the years to try and remove that dismissive attitude, which I think it's very prevalent, especially as we get older. We calcify what we like and we don't like, and we tend to drift over to that in a way that, the games we play are the games we know we're going to like. But we didn't know we were going to like those games till we played them, right? We kind of lucked into that, and you sort of figure out what your tastes and interests are. But it's one thing to enjoy what new things based on what you've enjoyed previously, but that also can be kind of boring. If you only live once, might as well play some Crusader Kings 2, I guess. So I guess if you think that's the best entry point in that series, let me know. If you think something else it makes it for a better fit, let me know as well. But I have tended to find with games like that, people have a million opinions about them, and I suspect that will remain prevalent with Crusader Kings 2. But let me know what you think, and I'd be happy to consider it. Anonymous asked, do you see yourself becoming a reoccurring guest on PAX Prime's Giant Bomb casts, even though you work for Kotaku now? Hey, if they'll have me, I would be more than happy to be a guest or do whatever. Potentially, I could be part of pulling a prank on them in the future, which is a pretty exciting prospect. I don't even know if I'm going to PAX East. I would like to go because, it's obviously a tremendous opportunity to meet face-to-face with folks like yourselves, people who have supported my work in the past, now, and in the future. And so it's always means a lot to me to get out to those shows. But, Kotaku has a pretty extensive network of writers, many of which are on the East Coast and are pretty close to Boston relative to my distance to Boston. So, it could be a case where if I'm going to PAX East, that's something I'm funding on my own. So any kind of way, does that make sense? Does that make more sense than just going to PAX Prime later in the year? So I haven't made a decision on that. Again, it's possible I could be going for work. It just seems sort of unlikely right now. But in regards to your question about Giant Bomb, if they'll have me, I'll be more than happy to join those guys. Anonymous asks, any thoughts on what happened to Prey 2? Former Human Head employees seem really upset with Bethesda's handling of the project. Why would a publisher try to acquire a studio through milestone abuse if they were doing such a bad job? Well, what I've always worried about Prey 2, and I can't say this with authority in that I've done reporting on it, is that what if that game was just that incredible demo? And let me tell you, I want to play the game made out of that demo. I would like nothing more. Maybe there's some things I'd like more, but like top 20 things I'd like nothing more of would be to actually play the game we all wanted from that Prey 2 demo. Because it visualized, it conceptualized an incredible world that just seemed like it was going to be so much fun to play around in. And it's entirely possible that it joins a list of games that had tremendous visions for what it could be, but actually pulling it off is a completely different story. Now, can't say that's actually what happened with Prey 2. Like I said, I only know as much as you all have read about it as well. I don't have any particular contacts in that direction. I looked into it for a little bit, and made a little bit of headway with people who had friends of friends at Human Head around the time that game was in development before everything kind of went sideways. But I can't really, with any authority, say too much about it. But it's also possible that Bethesda has not necessarily had the best track record with outside parties and the games that they ship. The strongest track record that Bethesda has is the games that come out of Todd Howard's studio and Bethesda GameWorks, or Bethesda Game Studios, rather. Because Bethesda Softworks is the publisher. In any case, Todd Howard, he's gold. But the stuff around that has not always been the greatest. I'm going to be super curious to see what ends up happening with id Software and the new Doom project that one assumes we're going to get some sort of real look at in the next couple of months. I wouldn't be surprised if that showed up on a March or April Game Informer cover ahead of a proper reveal at E3 later this year. And also it's weird to say E3. That gives me the shivers. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen to that. I don't know if it's ever going to come out, and maybe that was all for the best. But gotta say, sometimes I lay up late at night and I think about that Prey 2 demo, and it just what could have been, what could have been. Dan McMahon asks, Patrick, drink your beer. Okay. Loved your Inquisition comments. It not being in the MP, he didn't say to drink my beer, but I might add that a couple of times to comments just so I can take a sip. Love your Inquisition comments. It not being in the NPD top 10 for November or December really says the game isn't selling like the reviews would imply it as well. It says the game isn't selling the reviews would imply it would. I'm going to rephrase for you. Do you think we're reaching a point where stuff to do just to do it is losing traction in the marketplace? I hope so. No, I don't. The idea that big open worlds with a lot of boring stuff to do that isn't necessarily is enjoyable or as well crafted as the main narrative content isn't going away. I think that will be here to stay as long as worlds are getting bigger and the fidelity of them is getting not stronger, but it's the building worlds is a lot easier than building stuff in them, or at least it takes less time. I don't mean to take away from the artistry or the craft of people who put together those environments, but I think it says more about the Dragon Age brand in a mainstream context than it says anything about, even BioWare's ability to make those games. I mean, Dragon Age being pushed into November seemed like a combination of Electronic Arts wanting to give BioWare some extra time to put the spit and polish on that game, that when it shipped, it was still kind of rickety in a few places, especially on the PC side of things, but that it also was EA saying, you know what? Why can't we have a Skyrim? Why can't we do what Bethesda did? Why can't Dragon Age become a big-ass video game brand? And so, when the Inquisition reviews hit and they were all so universally positive, it seemed like EA was making a tremendously, I bet it was going to pay off tremendously. And yet, that didn't seem to happen from a financial perspective. Certainly seems like, Dragon Age Inquisition is a critical success. I have some pretty mixed feelings about it. I certainly, in retrospect, or I guess in hindsight, having sidestepped really kind of championing that game in the Giant Bomb's Game of the Year Awards cast because I'd only played 20 or so hours of the game. So I kind of said, how can you really get behind a game that you haven't finished, especially when it's story-based? I don't feel a whole lot differently now. I enjoyed my time with it. I'm glad I played it. I'm looking forward to playing another Dragon Age because I assume BioWare will make another one of those. But, EA thought that franchise was going to elevate to the next level, but maybe Dragon Age was a game that really needed to come out in, I don't know, January, February. Imagine if that game had come out in early January. They missed Christmas, they missed the fall rush, but I don't know. Maybe then it gets a little more breathing room in a marketplace that really just rewards the biggest of the big around that time. Anonymous asks, you authored the quick look of Xenoblade Chronicles. Did you finish it? No. I stopped after the quick look. Are you excited for X? Or rather, Xenoblade X? I don't forget what that game's called. It's my most anticipated game of the year, to be certain. So I didn't finish it because it just didn't seem like my kind of game. It had very MMO-like mechanics for the combat, and it just sort of, I thought it was interesting. I wanted to give it a shot. That was pretty early in my days of hey, at Giant Bomb, I want to play weird, obscure games that would probably normally either mock or not cover at all, and to try and give those a shot, not only because I think it's interesting for me, but because I think the audience deserves us to try and, I don't necessarily like the game, but to certainly represent it and give it a shot in a genuine fashion. But, I got to the end of that 7 or 8 hours and thought, not really my thing. That said, I'm kind of curious about the 3DS version. Maybe that would be an opportunity to give it another shot. If nothing else, man, that Wii U RPG looks fucking gorgeous, and I'm certainly interested in trying it out, giving that another shot. Those giant dragons and other creatures running around, I mean, it's stuff like that that makes you go, or it certainly reminds you that art goes a lot further than technology a lot of the time, and it's a game that, sure, would it be cool if it was made on Xbox One and PS4? Yeah, but I don't watch the trailers for that game and go, wow, I really wish it was on new hardware. Like, it just looks great. And I hope it plays just as well as it looks. My guess is it's going to be kind of an evolution of what was already present in Xenoblade Chronicles. So, it might end up being something that I just sort of shrug at, but definitely willing to give it a shot. And just like I did the last one. Anonymous asks, Patrick, you've been doing this for a while. When you started games journalism, was it immediately clear to you this was your calling? Or was it something that you realized over a longer period of time? If you're thirsty, take a drink. Okay, that's very kind of you, anonymous questioner. I don't even know how you knew that's how I was feeling. No, it was not immediately clear it was my calling. I got into games journalism because it was a pragmatic decision of I need to get a job. I've been writing about games when I was younger. I was very fortuitous in that the area that I was growing up as a kid was near where EGM used to be located. I was fortuitous in the websites I started visiting led me to an IRC channel in which a lot of the people in that IRC channel ended up working for EGM and later 1UP. And I kept in touch with all those people. And because I was in touch with those people, they gave me freelance jobs. And then once I was graduating in college, I was top of mind for a full-time gig. It's, I'm not going to say I didn't work for that or earn it, or that, keeping in touch with people and maintaining those relationships isn't hard work all on its own. It totally is. But, man, looking back on it, I sure had it easy, and I just was kind of right place, right time. But, right place, right time is taking advantage of the opportunities presented to you, and you're not going to be able to do that unless you're keeping your eye on the ball and you're working hard at it, and, I like to think that I did do that. But, no, it was not something that I thought was my calling. It was more that this seems like something I should do, or this seems like something this seems like a way I can get paid. It seems like something I could do. I wonder if I can make that happen. Because at the time, I truly could not tell you what the hell else I would have done with my life. I have no idea, if I had not fallen into games, what other path I could have gone down. I mean, I was not considering anything else. I went into journalism, thought games writing was going to be my thing, thought I had enough connections to make it happen. And, if you removed that stuff and then I was told, hey, you got to come up with another path, I have no idea what that would have been. I guess I would have come up with something. Certainly I would have found a job. What exactly that would have been, I was just never in a position to have to think anything else. And so I guess I'm extremely lucky in that regard, but also it's kind of terrifying to think about it now and go, I have no idea what I would have done if I wasn't writing about games. So now I've come this far. Geez, if it didn't work out, I'd be in trouble. Anonymous asks, I'm going to keep this one to the end because people get pissy when we talk about sports, so I'm going to leave it for the very end. Sasquatch Doobie says, I was wondering what motivated you to grow a goatee. I feel like I haven't seen those since the late 90s, early 2000s, but that just might be my unique experience. So I've never really tried to grow facial hair prior to doing this, and this is about all I can do. I can't get the full beard. If I try to let this grow out too much, it just gets scraggly and weird, and it doesn't fill in the places that I want it to. But, a couple days into not shaving, I look like someone that should be on a watch list. And so I've never really given it a shot because the times when you would want maybe given that an experimental phase would be, high school and college when, I don't know, you're just less concerned about things like that. But once I, was working in the professional world, the idea that I was going to look awkward and gross and weird didn't seem like it was something I could do. And so I never bothered trying to grow facial hair past that like a couple day phase. And when I shattered my collarbone, almost 2 years ago, we call it around 2 years next month, which is crazy. I was going to be at home for about a month. I think it ended up being less than that, but my thought process was if I ever was just going to let this go and see if I can get past the awkward phase, it's going to happen right here, right now. When I'm home, I already look like a wreck. My wife's not going to judge me for it, so I'm going to grow that facial hair. I'm just going to see how that goes, and love it or hate it. I think my wife's a little in the middle. Every once in a while, she brings up, "What if you shaved?" But then I think to myself, it's nice not getting my ID checked nearly as much, and shaving sucks. Maintaining this is nothing compared to actually shaving on a daily or semi-daily basis. I don't know. I'm sure at some point I'll go back and I will shave, but you might have to drag me kicking and screaming. Anonymous said to Patrick Club, video games, good or bad? Pretty good. They were pretty good last year. I hope they're better this year. I'm really excited about a bunch of the games coming out, which actually comes to our next question. Super Lex Viz, what's your most anticipated game for 2015? I think right off the bat, my gut reaction is Witcher 3. I'm excited for Majora's Mask 3DS, but that's a remake of a game I already like. So it's just a game I'm gonna play again. Which I'm excited about, but kind of whoop-de-doo. So, video games 2015. Let's look up a list. Let's see what's coming out. Ooh, too many ads. Google. Oh wow, I didn't realize Google now populates games coming out in 2015 just before or just under your sort of search. Let's see. Super Mario Galaxy 2, you do not count. The Resident Evil HD remaster, that I'm actually gonna be writing about that on Kotaku tomorrow. I need to play a bunch of it tonight. Dying Light, I hope is good, but as much as I liked Dead Island, the bits of Dying Light I played at E3 this year did not inspire a whole lot of confidence. I know Evolve is probably the first major game this year, I guess, after Dying Light, but I don't have any interest in playing a competitive co-op shooter. Just not something I'm interested at all. There came an Echo, kind of interesting strategy game that you can use voice commands for. I think could be kind of cool. This is going to take forever to go through. I'm going to go back to see the highlights. So I guess I might end up missing some of the video games 2015. The Order, Uncharted 4, Metal Gear Solid 5. Oh, Bloodborne. Yeah, cool. Let's just end there. Yeah. Bloodborne is the game I'm looking forward to most in 2015. I feel like Bloodborne could be the real Dark Souls 2. I know that some people really like Dark Souls 2. I thought it was okay. I don't think it was bad. I just thought it was kind of disappointing. Although one of the pieces I want to write at Kotaku as we get closer to Bloodborne is this: I have maybe a running theory that your first Dark Souls or your first Souls game is your favorite Souls game because it changes it sort of colors your entire conception of the series. So it's possible that if you play Demon Souls first, that's your favorite. Play Dark Souls first, that's your favorite. Play Dark Souls 2 first, that's your favorite. It doesn't mean that that's going to hold true for everyone, but I have a suspicion that may hold up for a lot of people. But man, Bloodborne, I feel like that's going to be my jam. So Bloodborne is probably, it's pretty cool to feel like my favorite game of the year might come that early. And that just means that the rest of the year is just a bunch of surprises yet to come. And who knows what will come out of nowhere. I'm also really excited for Titan Souls, which is a really cool looking overhead Dark Souls / Shadow of the Colossus inspired one-hit action game that I've played a bit of at PAX and other events. So looking forward to that in the future as well. Boop, boop. Anonymous asks, how you liking the Kotaku comment system? It seems much more difficult to interact with you and start a conversation than the Giant Bomb one was. Yeah, not my favorite part about Kotaku. It works okay, I guess. Anonymous asks, I never thought I'd go online and ask someone this, but do you have any advice for a soon-to-be college graduate? I've got to balance between grinding to afford living and doing what actually matters to me, and you always seem to be full of sensible wisdom. Thanks, and I enjoy the new show. Well, thanks for enjoying the new show. Tip my hat to you, and I'll take a sip. Man, hard to say because my experience was so weird, right? So I was working under Luke Smith, who's a former news editor at 1UP, former writer for Kotaku a long, long time ago. He then went on to become, it's not a writer, but like a community, I think he left to be a community manager towards the end of Halo 3 over at Bungie, and he left, which left a vacuum for the news editor position at 1UP, and I had been working under him, and so when he left, he made sort of a pitch for me to take his spot, but at that time, I was in the midst of graduating college, and so when 1UP said, look, we're willing to offer you the position, but we're going to need you to move out sooner rather than later. I had always had the idea that I'd spend, one last summer at home with all my college friends, not work that summer, kind of live off my savings, and then in the fall, move out to San Francisco, look for a full-time job. But, when opportunities present themselves, you kind of just have to grab them and go with it. And so I said, okay, I'm going to take this job, and I'm going to move to San Francisco 2 weeks after graduating. I actually had to fly back from San Francisco to Chicago for my graduation party because I left that quickly. It was the right decision. It kickstarted my career, put me on the track that I am now, got me exposed to Stephen Totillo of Kotaku, who then hired me over to MTV News. I wouldn't be where I am right now if not for that chain of events that kind of put a lot of other things in motion. I guess, generally speaking, it's the reason why it's tough to give a lot of advice to a college graduate is because the field has changed so much. Now, you haven't necessarily said if you are going into games writing or want to go into games writing. So, I'm going to try and, I guess, think of it in a more broader perspective and just like, what do you do once you're out of school? And I think you have to find that balance, right? Like, so let's say you got a degree and you're having trouble finding a job, within that realm. This actually applies to folks that have come to me for advice about games writing, in so much as I realize you would want to do what you love full time, but maybe it's just not happening right now. But don't give up. Do it on the side. Commit to your passion and keep at it, because you only can, like I said before, you can only identify and take advantage of opportunities once you're looking for them. And maybe that's not your full time. Maybe that's not something you're doing every single day. But you're hustling to make ends meet, to pay your bills, to keep food on the table. But then you're still allowing yourself an opportunity to identify a situation that might allow you to move forward with your passion project. And so you kind of scale and manage that stuff so that if there is something that comes along that allows you to make that transition, you're going to be ready for it. And games writing specifically, I tell people, find a niche. Find what you're really passionate about. You love Dark Souls? Well, then write about those kinds of games. They not necessarily just Souls games, but those sort of hardcore action games. Like, find a beat. Find something that you are the best at and you are an expert at, because that allows you to differentiate yourself from anyone else out there. And you can say, this has been something I've been following. Here's a bunch of informed expertise pieces that I've written about it. And that's going to make you stand out from just, I'm good at writing about games, which works for some people and certainly helps if you've been doing it for a long time, but it's not necessarily going to be the case if you're just kind of getting started and trying to stand out. So hey, good luck to you, man. I know that the economy is better, but it certainly depends on the field you're in, and it's always rough making that transition right out of school. So cheers. Hope it works out for you, and if there's anything else you want to ask me about, feel free to hit me up here, or just shoot me an email. I'd be happy to chat with you further. Anything I can do to help, I want to do. Mind the Dust asks, not sure if it's kosher to ask, but are you getting more hits on your Kotaku stuff than you did on your Giant Bomb articles? I mean, yeah, Giant Bomb is a bigger website than Kotaku. Kotaku is a bigger website than Giant Bomb. It does way more traffic. It just has an incredible amount of eyeballs on it at all times, and it allows stories to take off in a way that are just unfathomable. So to provide an example, some context, one of the biggest stories I've ever done was, the Xbox One DRM reversal, of which, I have no idea where the traffic ended up on that. My guess is it continued to do very well for a long time to come, but basically in like 24 hours or the first couple of days, it did something like 1 million hits, which is crazy. When something of mine hits Reddit and does really, really well, like that would kind of end up between like 100 and 150,000. So to get 1 million views is just unprecedented. It was bigger than anything Giant Bomb had ever done in the past. I think the only thing that ended up rivaling it, and what actually I think might have surpassed it, was the article that went up about Ryan's passing, which, hey, good on you, man. That's, if I was going to get beaten by anything, I have no problem with that. But, the average story does a little bit better on Kotaku. But so there's some part of the differences, and the thing I'm kind of struggling with and trying to figure out, like take Worth Reading, for example. So Worth Reading did significantly less traffic on Kotaku in its first instance. Part of that is because I put it up on Friday evening because I was still figuring out formatting issues and a bunch of other things were going on. So it went up a lot later than I would have hoped. But so, for example, on Giant Bomb, we have sort of the site has the news feed, and that has all the content on the site and the news articles and trailers and blah 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 blah. And that's just sort of like, that's everything that's on the site, just kind of in a chronological format. But then what's at the very top are 4 modules, 1 main one and 3 smaller ones that tell you, hey, if you don't want to look through what's on the site, here is the best of the best, whether it's our written content or video content. Sorry, it's going to take me a long time to break the R on that, just because I was a part of it for so long. And Kotaku doesn't really have that. There are moments where things will be kind of pinned so that folks can get a better look at it, but there's never going to be a case where an article is pinned to the top of the page for, let's say, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so for Worth Reading, for example, part of what was great about it was that it would be pinned Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So people could kind of peruse over to the site, kind of casually come across it, read the articles they wanted to check out, whatever stuff I put in there. And that just doesn't happen at Kotaku. So maybe that means I need to modify Worth Reading. Maybe I would have to break it up. I have no idea. I'm in the early phases of kind of seeing how that goes with the Kotaku audience, how that meshes with the fact that things move so quickly on Kotaku's website. Still figuring out those parts. So, generally speaking, to answer your question, yes, my stuff does get more traffic, more eyeballs on Kotaku than it did at Giant Bomb. But the interaction is a little bit different, right? Like, there's a much stronger community reaction at Giant Bomb just because that's what Giant Bomb is based on. Kotaku has a great, interesting, diverse community that I'm excited to get to know and to learn as the days, the months, and the years go forward. But Giant Bomb is just a community site. So it is, it has tools and features that are built around that. And it also means that the community responds to content because it's so selective in a way that's different than, say, at Kotaku. So, still kind of figuring that stuff out. But, it is interesting to have your stuff in front of so many eyeballs. I will say that. To see the number go up to the places that it does on such a regular basis is kind of cool. I will admit that. And we'll end on this one. We'll end with the question I was going to put all the way at the bottom. Anonymous asks, how do you feel about the Bears' new coach? John Fox, former Broncos, former Panthers coach. The last 2 years have not been super great for the Bears. A lot of instability, especially in this past season. Just all over the map, emotionally, physically, athletically. Just not a lot of leadership happening, it seemed like, on the coaching side. And so, John Fox, about to turn 60 or did turn 60, had a heart attack, getting up there in age, but he's a veteran coach who I think is going to bring stability and leadership to an organization that desperately needs it. It's not so much about whether John Fox turns the Bears around and takes them to a Super Bowl. It's about John Fox putting the Bears on the path to getting to a Super Bowl in the next decade. Because in the next decade, the Bears are going to continue to be dealing with Aaron Rodgers, a Minnesota Vikings team on the ascent, and a Detroit Lions team that's always going to be just annoying enough to stick around, even if they never quite put together the team that they should with the amount of talent they have on their roster. So I'm curious about where we go from here. I'm glad that Trestman is gone. I'm glad that Phil Emery is gone. I think there could be some deep, interesting cuts happening to the team in the future. Do you keep people like Brandon Marshall? I don't know. But I am excited about the future. I think as a fan, you always have to be optimistic because what's the fun in thinking everything's going to be horribly wrong? But then again, you always have to face Aaron Rodgers. So but at least the Packers lost. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for joining me, you guys. Apologize again for having this video go up so late. thanks for all the people who have subscribed to the channel. This is just kind of the early days. This is something we're just kind of dipping our toes into, and there's going to be a lot more to come in the future, I promised you, and I realize by constantly saying more to come that, that more has to come in order for that to mean anything. But it truly is going to happen. But, January is kind of a month of readjustment. There's a lot of moving pieces in my life. But once that stuff calms down as we move into February, I think there's going to be some really exciting, cool stuff happening that I hope you'll join me for. And please let me know what you'd like to see. I'm here to check out some cool stuff that I think is interesting, but I want you guys to be a part of that. So please let me know. Please give me feedback here. Give me feedback on Twitter. Give me feedback on Tumblr. If you'd like to submit questions for a future show, make sure and do so at patrickklepek.tumblr.com. I answer questions there, but then I'll also take that pool of questions and I'll bring some of them up for this video Q&A. And hey, there's other stuff you'd like me to see, stuff you'd like me to do, or there's stories you'd like me to write on Kotaku, give me a shout. But until then, I will see you guys next Monday, and I'll see you, around on the internet. So